Hi. Today, I'd like to introduce you to finetune-collect, an open source application I wrote in Godot that lets you create, curate, and export fine-tuning files for OpenAI. It supports text messages, images, and user-defined function calls. It supports various types of fine-tuning: supervised fine-tuning, direct preference optimization, and in the future, also reinforcement fine-tuning. I'll give you a quick overview of what the application is used for and how to use it. First, an explanation of when fine-tuning is actually a good idea. You can usually use fine-tuning in two main scenarios. 1. If your instructions are so varied and plentiful that they'd never fit into a single prompt, or if the prompt would become so long that it's just not financially viable to use it. Or 2. If it's not really possible to formulate what exactly you want in a prompt, and it would be easier to show the model a set of correct outputs. For example, if you are going for a certain style or certain wording. Now, here's my use case that we'll use as an example for this demonstration. As some of you know, I'm involved in the campus radio in Chemnitz. In our broadcasts, we like to talk about what's happening on campus. So, I thought it would be great if these little announcements could be written automatically by ChatGPT. I tried it and, well, ChatGPT completely messed it up. And even with more prompting, it just wouldn't do what I wanted. But I do have a clear idea of what these announcements should look like, because I've already written so many of them so many times before. That's the perfect use case for fine-tuning. Let's use my program finetune-collect to fine-tune a model for this scenario. Let's get started. First, we need finetune-collect, the program. We can either download it from GitHub under the releases section, or we use it directly on the web. I will use it directly on the web for this demonstration. Over here, you can see our conversations. One conversation is already created when we open up the program. Let's start with an example where I want the AI to take a bullet point from me and turn it into a complete announcement. So I click New Message, choose the user and select Text. Then I enter my bullet points. After that, I add another message. This time, I choose the assistant and select Text. Then, I add what the assistant should ideally respond with in this case. And that's it. That's our first training conversation. Now, I'd like another conversation. This time, I want the assistant to pull information from an image. So I create a new conversation and select it. I add another message from the user, but this time I select Image. Now I can load an image of a picture I took from a flyer just a few moments ago. For an image, I can also choose how detailed the image data should be for the model. A higher level of detail uses more tokens and thus costs more, but also has a low level of detail and the model might not recognize everything correctly. Now, I can write the appropriate text in an assistant message. To see the image better, you can zoom in with Ctrl plus left click on the image and zoom out with Ctrl plus right click. So, let's write the text. Next, I want to look at a use case where the AI has to call a function. Let's say I want the AI to write a report for today. For that, the AI needs to be able to retrieve today's date. So, we go to Functions and add a new function that retrieves the current date. Then, we create a new conversation, and in a previous user message, we instruct the assistant to create an announcement for today. We add the user message, and then the user message with the image, and then we want the AI to understand that the proper response now would be to query the current date. So, we add an assistant message of the type function call, and select the function that retrieves today's date. Then, we select the response we'd expect to receive in this example. Let's say the return date is this one. In this case, it would be good if the final announcement mentions that something is happening tomorrow, because, as you can see, if this is today's date, the thing that is talked about in the flyer is happening tomorrow. So, we write that in our ideal assistant's message. And this wraps up this sample conversation as well. Maybe one more example that demonstrates advanced function uses. Let's say I want to be able to ask the assistant for an announcement of the meals available in the cafeteria for a certain day. But first, the assistant needs to retrieve that information. So, We go back to functions and add another function. This time, it's a function to fetch the cafeteria's meal plan for a specified cafeteria and a specified date. We add a few parameters to the function: year, month, and day, which are all numbers, and then the cafeteria itself, which is not just a string, but a string enumeration, because there's only a specific set of valid options. Now we can create our sample conversation. Again, we give an instruction in the user message. What would the correct response from the assistant be? Well, first it should get the current date, and then it should get the cafeteria meal plan for the specified cafeteria and for the date, which is the day after the one we returned from the current date call, because we want the cafeteria meals for tomorrow. Let's say this data is returned. Now we write the text that we'd like to see in this case. And tada, that's another example conversation done. If we don't feel like writing the responses from scratch, we can ask ChatGPT directly for our response and then improve it. To do that, we go into the settings, enter our OpenAI API token, and then select the model we want to use for completions. Keep in mind, just because a model appears here, it doesn't mean it can be used for completions. It only means you have access to that model. By the way, here you can also select an already fine-tuned model if you want to continue improving it. In the settings, you can also set a global system message. This is then added before each conversation, both when exporting and when requesting a chat completion. That saves us from having to include the same message in every conversation. Let's create another example conversation and have ChatGPT itself generate a response. And here we see why we are doing this fine-tuning. This is absolutely not how I'd imagine it. But oh well, we can still work with it and adjust it instead of having to write it completely from scratch. If we want to save our progress, we can save a fine-tuning project and load it again later. If you're on the web, the file is simply downloaded. On the desktop, you can save it using the usual save dialog. Once we're done and want to upload the file to OpenAI, we can do that via the export button. Then it's downloaded or saved, and we can upload it to the OpenAI dashboard to start a fine-tuning job. I hope you find this program useful. If you have feature requests, notice any bugs, or want to tidy up my spaghetti code, feel free to open issues or submit pull requests. Bye-bye.